Good evening. It's late tonight. I had to wait to film till later. Uh, my roommate had come back from Tokyo, and we were catching up and whatnot, which was cool. So, ooh, it's not Thursday. It's actually Saturday. Yeah, so he got back from Tokyo a couple days ago. Been catching up, and I had to close yesterday at work, but it was cool. Had a former coworker came in to help out, and so we got a chance to catch up a little bit. That was very cool. Um, so yeah, so this is gonna be the first video in a one of the series I want to do, um, and this one is about, pardon me, military equipment, systems, and platforms. So, and how they're named and designated, and why they're uh, named the way they are. So, in this system, or in a series of videos, um, the title of the series is going to be the Index. Ooh, Protocol. Basically for systems and, oh, I can't write tonight. Systems and platforms, or IPSP for short, for right now. There might be a different name that I'll come up with later. So essentially, so an index protocol basically is going to list out every element of why the military or other industries or fields will, why they name their various systems and platforms the way they do. And so one of the first things I want to show is, well, define, show. My first thing is define is what is a system, what is a platform. So a system, well, actually, start with platform. Platform is basically a vehicle. It could be a ship, aircraft. So basically, any, vehicle, I guess, is a mode of conveyance, or, a frame. Uh, Anything that personnel are going to mount, and drive or sail or fly. And a system, basically, systems are what get mounted to vehicles. So those can include weapons. So that's why you always hear terms like weapon systems. They can be sensors, equipment, and let's see what else. Weapons, sensors, equipment. Oh, you have countermeasures. Ooh, my writing's kind of bad tonight, or a lot. Okay, countermeasures. And then you also have, let's call it, oh, your armor systems. So, weapons are offensive, armor is defensive. And then you also have your shield systems, which in science fiction tends to be like energy shields and whatnot. In the real world, or in the modern day today, your shields tend to be like for frequency warfare, or things like jamming systems, electronic countermeasures, items like that. And then let's see. Yeah, so basically systems, whatever you're going to mount to the vehicle. So equipment is usually, you know, optics, things like that. So, and in general, there's a large list. And so let me make sure my frame here is. So the bigger list is, you're going to have, actually, the bigger list, the whole list of everything, at least everything I could think of, is going to be things like, okay, so what branch of the military do they belong to? And, this would be like Navy, Air Force, Marines, Army, Space Force. The next is going to be, I guess I should put that over here. So, let's put one. So this would be like Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force, Space Force. And another way you can put this too, if you haven't decided what you're actually going to call your different branches, is you could do, sea, land, air, space. Marines would be, you call it sea, land, amphibious, whatever you want to come up with. You can also do, sea forces, ground forces, that kind of thing. The next, and some of these are ones that are unofficial that I've made up for my own world building. So branches, not something you'll generally, you'll hear that, but and then domain would be, actually, I'm repeating myself here, so I apologize. Branch is going to be your land, air, sea, space, and we could even include, if we wanted to, cyberspace too, because that's a pretty dominant domain in modern battle space nowadays. But land's pretty obvious, air is obvious. Sea is gonna have, so surface. So your ships that sail on the surface, and then you're going to have your subsurface, and those will be for things like submersibles and submarines. So space, there's two different ones that I came up with, and you're going to have ones where you're going to have ships that operate in, ships or craft that operate in nominal space or normal space, whatever you decide to call it. And then your ships that say FTL, we can call those like dimensional space. So normal space, FTL, nominal, dimensional, whatever you like to call it. The third item would be, where to go? Oh, okay. So it'd be an order. And again, this one is not official. This is one I made up to help further break down the detail that you'll run into. So your order is going to basically identify things like, okay, so is this a system that we're looking at or a platform? You know, like in general. So are we looking at a weapons system, for instance? Or are we looking at a weapons platform or a logistics platform or a support platform? If we're looking at ships, are we looking at craft? And I'm using real world examples. Or ships. You know, Air Force, it might be things like, are we looking at tactical or strategic? You know, there might be a way of separating that. Crafting ships is pretty, very distinct. You know, a system and a platform, you know, a piece of equipment being mounted on a vehicle, very different. And you'll find in some cases like these terms will get kind of interchanged a lot. You know, weapon systems in the Army, and the Marines, they'll do that. They'll say like this is an AR-15, you know, a rifle platform, right? So this I'm applying to kind of you know, mecha, and you'll find a lot of military terms will be interchangeable, like the descriptor for gun. Okay, so sorry. So we have branch, domain, order. The fourth part is going to be what we call the line. And the line, essentially, is it going to be, you know, your first or your, aka your front line? So your most modern or elite type forces. So, and you have your second line, and these are going to be like older, either older machines, older systems or platforms, or they're going to be an older variant of say the same platform. So like if you take something like the M1 Abrams, they have the A1, A2, A3. So if you go into a battle, you'll send in the A2s, you know, they'll be up front. And then your A1s might be, you know, held in reserve, or might be a second line force that, say, a different branch is using. And then you'll have your reserve forces. And the reserve is usually like older, you know, systems and platforms that got retired, but they were still useful, so they give them to your reserve forces, like your National Guard, your Guard or reserve forces, depending on what your countries will call it. So that would be the line. For navies, it'd be things like you'd have your fleet, like fleet carriers, fleet cruisers. You know, these are like, they have in general, you can think of it like they have the most modern systems, and they're generally have the most capabilities. And then you know, you'd have you could call it second line. Back in the Age of Sail, they had like first rate, second rate, third rate, you know, kind of go down the line. And then of course you have your Naval Reserve. And then the next thing you'll look at, oh, I still, oh, I am not in frame. I apologize. Holy cow. That's not good. All right. Oh, let me turn the page here. Yeah, so that would be, yeah, fourth one, the line there. I'll have to watch that next time. I'm still learning. So the fifth item, or category or descriptor, I think we'll call them descriptors. The fifth one, frame. Okay, cool. Fifth one would be the rate. And your rate, oh, that's right, this one I split into two things. So rate, or if you're dealing with ground forces or army, or, Air Force, I suppose, I can't spell today, specialty. So your rate or specialty, rate generally refers to Navy. So, this is going to be, well, I'll use the Navy. So your rate is going to describe, for instance, what's the mission of the platform of the system that you have in there. So for instance, in the Navy, you have carriers. You have what we call surface combatants. It can be surface fighting ships and whatnot too. And you have things like landing, or this is what everyone would know as amphibious assault. And then you have submarines. You have auxiliary fleets, which in the U.S. Navy, auxiliary is not, sci-fi has a tendency of using this word in a weird way, but in the military terminology, auxiliary isn't a backup. Auxiliary is, by the actual definition, it augments a element in the military. So for instance, the auxiliary fleet, which is all your combat logistics, that's another name for it too, enhances and augments your fighting fleet. So your fighting forces can only fight if they have fuel, food, supplies, ammunition. And the auxiliary fleets, just like ground force mobile logistics, allows your fighting forces to continue to move forward and stay in the fight, have longer endurance and whatnot. So it's not a backup. It's kind of funny. Sci-fi has created that sort of image of what the word auxiliary means. So these would be examples here. And I know I'm forgetting some. So you'd have support. And support would be things like your dry docks, your subtenders. If it was World War I, you'd have like seaplane tenders. Although those could probably fall into it, auxiliary. Gosh, I know there's some others, but that'll give a basic idea. So number 6. The 6th descriptor would be, and I'm going to stick with ships for right now, just because it's what I know, or what I've defined. So would be the rank. Now the rank in ships would be things like this. You'd have escort, you'd have cruiser, and these are the fighting ships. And then you have capital. So these are your small or light ships. These are medium ships, and these are your the queens of the sea. So your battle cruisers, battleships, carriers fall into that as well. The fleet carriers, your larger landing ships, And the rank, if it was land forces, actually, I guess we can go into that. So you have things like, light, medium, heavy, right? And of course, there's like super heavy, super capital. I'll just keep it simple for right now. Okay, and then another descriptor you have would be the type. So, and types, if we're talking, types fall within each of these ranks. So in this case with the Navy, you're going to have types for, say, within the escort, you're going to have things like, sloops, corvettes. These aren't official designations, by the way. I just made these up. Then you're going to have frigates, FF. You're going to have destroyers, DD. And then for cruisers, you're going to have things like, this one's unofficial, but it's what we call anti-aircraft cruisers, but escort cruiser. Then you're going to have, this is the wrong one, sorry. Then you're going to have light cruisers. You're going to have the heavy cruiser, which, you could say CA comes from the U.S. Navy, and we call them CAs because there was a older cruiser type called the armored cruiser. It's an interesting ship type, but that ship type eventually got split into the light cruiser and the heavy cruiser. Let's see, and then your capital ships, you have your battle cruisers, your battleships, say your, it's called CVH, right? Your heavy carriers, or your fleet carriers, the landing ships, today we would call those LHDs. And, again, I'm going to go into detail about all of these individual details, but for this video, I just wanted to explain these different descriptors. So 8, after the type, you're going to have the class. So in the class, it'll generally be a name, right? So let's make up something fun. Let's see, we got it's called the BB-95, usually named after, at least in the U.S., they're named after states. So that's called the Oregon. You can make up any name you want. The Fire Dragon, the Flying Viking. Something. You can come up with all sorts of fun names. So within the class, you're going to have usually a name, right? So that's usually what the class is referred to. Now the class is also this whole number here. And now the next part I'm going to write down, I made this up. This is just give me some sort of an organized way of remembering this. So you have what we call military, alpha, numeric, oh my gosh, I can't spell. Identification. Mainframe? Oh boy, sorry. Designation. System. And what's cool about when you're making this stuff up, when you're designing things, you can come up with multiple different ways of saying something. So, for instance, you could say, this is MANID, it's another D, and S. So it could be the Manids. Or if you wanted to, you could say, this is another fun thing to do. If you have multiple letters in sequence and they're the same letter, you can do this. So the Manid 2S. If you want to go really short, you could just say Military Alphanumeric Identification Designation System, or MAIDS. So depending, this would work in a mecha series, or if you got like Fleet Girls, or some of the popular genres are android combat maids, which usually they're cat girls, and they're highly dangerous and lethal, and that, or it's just fun and whatnot. So there's all sorts of things you can do. But so this military alphanumeric ID designation system, or designator system, is essentially this like the BB95, or see like CVN 82, that kind of thing, and or M1A1s, F14D, Tomcat, and essentially the alphanumeric. So your alphabet, BB, what letters are using. Your numeric would be the 95. The ID, well, this whole thing identifies the class. And then your designators would be the BB, the 95, and the name of the ship, or the class name of the ship. And it goes the same for aircraft. And oh, pardon me. It's 2:51 in the morning. Okay, so the next part. Actually, the final part is going to be the generation. And the generation, you hear this a lot, where they'll say, like, this is, especially today, if any of you saw Top Gun Maverick, you heard, Gen 4 aircraft, Gen 5 aircraft, and you'll have the upgraded versions, which will be like, Gen 4.5, right? And so the generation is, there hasn't been like an official hard system laid down to say this is what determines the jump from one generation to another. In general, it's some sort of big leap in technology. So for instance, if we look at World War I, Gen 1 aircraft, be biplanes, right? So you're talking about dual wings. They did have mono wings back then, but they were, wood, fabric. You had limited ammunition, very light machine guns, and then you go from that to all metal frames. World War II, and into World War II, you got mono wings, so single wing, and you're talking about going to heavy machine guns and eventually cannons, and these are much faster aircraft, much more high-powered propulsion systems. So that becomes Gen 2. Gen 3 is where you jump in the jets. So if you look at Korea, you got the F-86 Sabres, you got the MiG-17s, those kind of aircraft. And then Gen 4 usually embraces, like, they'll have heavy cannons, 20, 30 millimeter, or I should say heavier guns, so in a cannon caliber, and then they have guided missiles. That's the big thing. So and then and then you have Gen 4, which you're talking about supersonic aircraft. Actually, no, Gen 3 had supersonic aircraft too. So Gen 4, you're talking more like Cold War, where more of the aircraft that we think of, like the Hornet, the Viper, the MiG-29s, F-14 Tomcats, which never should have been retired. And generation also applies to the systems, so your weapon systems, your sensors and whatnot. So there could be, what I want to do with that hopefully soon, is kind of develop a guideline that where you can look at all the different systems, see what generation you're at, and then see where that pushes the platform itself. But yeah, in general, you hear that. So Gen 5 generally usually tends to incorporate a lot of stealth technology, although stealth has been around for quite a while. It just depends on what. Oops, I'm shaking the phone. Apologize. Just depends on the, is it visual? Is it acoustic? Audio. Is it frequency? And frequency is usually what we're looking at today. Stealth versus radar. So, yeah. So these. Pardon me. So this index protocol is a series that I want to do that's essentially going to help mecha designers and world builders and lore masters to be able to, if they want to, take a system or platform and to help basically break it down and figure out exactly what, kind of where it may fall in a line of ships. Is this power armor? Is this a hard suit? Is this a fighter? Is this a bomber? Just a lot. You run into these questions as you, especially when you're digging into the lore, or if you're a gearhead. A lot of conversations and fun arguments. Sometimes people get a little too intense about it, but yeah, it's essentially what I want to do. So today's Saturday, and my phone is about to die. But later today, I'm going to start the first video, and that will have. We'll dive into the branch, the domain, the order, and the line, and then the second video after, or the third video after that, in this series, we'll go into the rate, and then there'll be a separate video for the rank, a separate one for the type, and a separate one for the military designator system. And the reason we're going to be doing separate ones is that once you hit rate and ranks and types and whatnot, that's where you start getting in. You can do, it becomes more and more detailed because there's more to talk about. For instance, you get types, and it's like the ship types. You start talking about, well, what's the difference between a corvette and a frigate and a cruiser? All of those kind of fun things to talk about. So, yeah, that's the plan. And shorter video today, but yeah, sorry this one's late, but I am working on a better schedule in order to be consistent and get these out more and really get this rolling forward. So the plan is to put out a lot of videos and just to get this to a place where there's enough content on the channel to help people. So, yeah. So, have fun, guys. Geek out, nerd out. Dive into lore. Talk to other creatives, and engage in different communities and whatnot. And yeah, so let's keep having fun and being the geeks and the nerds that we love being. All right, take care, guys. Love you. Bye.